Thank you very much, FICCI, for giving me the first day out after the budget.
And you for giving us the first chance.
And I'm glad that you had the chance to question in detail every secretary who's found place here, and I think 2 more are expecting to join. They're here now, you can interact. In most such sessions, I find that more than a one-sided monologue, opening up and being ready to answer the question serves multiple purposes. The individual feels that his question has been answered, and the rest of them who didn't think of that question can always feel, all right, I've also had the benefit of answering. And most often, again, when after a very long budget speech, if I have to do the opening, there's not going to be any novelty in it. So I would only probably say 2 or 3 things. I would want to alter one statement made by Sangeeta ji. We are here to support, is what she said. I'm grateful. But I would have thought that's what you want the government to do to you. So you should be the engine, you should be moving forward, you should really be pulling the economy, and we are here to support. And ideally, in a maximum governance situation, minimum government situation, that's what we should be doing. And I would have thought you'll easily say, remain there, do just that support, not anything more. So I take the spirit with which that's been said by Sangeeta ji, but then the fact is, that's the area to which we are moving. Government will want to be a facilitator. And we do things with a lot of consultation. So from day before, when people have asked me, you must have spent 3-4 weeks in this budget and must have been a long haul. Not 3-4 weeks, this was a longer haul. Since after July budget, for the purposes of wanting to respond to the stakeholder consultations that we've held, because the demands of the economy warranted that we do it. And of course, on some matters, we did come with some interventions, sufficient, inadequate, whatever it may be, we did come up with the interventions. But having come up with some interventions, we didn't leave the rest of the agenda of what we had heard then there and moved ahead. We carried those agenda forward and again fine-tuned them, placed them in the context of the revenue which is being generated, and took a call. So I'm not sure if I gave the longest speech, but I probably spent the longest time preparing for a budget. So in a way, the time spent was not just in Delhi, it was also all over the country where we met and interacted with people who had a stake in the economy directly. And although the objective with which I went around the country was to talk about the issues which were very pressing for them, and the other equal agenda during that visit was to talk to the tax administrators to tell them it would be really good if they could achieve the targets given to them without any overreaching. And the overreaching was the issue which was in the mind of most of the tax assessees, and therefore it had a 2-pronged strategy of 1, keeping them motivated, and 2, making sure that they don't really keep obsessing about the targets which we had given them. Whether that has found its immediate impact or not, we still thought it was important for us to express the intent of the government that we mean that we trust the assessees rather than we mean that we trust the assessee, we mean we trust the taxpayer, and that the tax authorities are going to have to be a lot more objective. And that is why we relied on getting technology into a big role. I mean, give technology a bigger role, bring them in, and make sure the assessments are more monitored, more documented, and that is why giving a document number, doing a faceless assessment and so on were brought in. But even then, it was going towards a position where, end of the day, we wanted the government's commitment to be made very clear, and that is why very rapidly a call was taken on a well-researched proposal of having a taxpayers' charter put into the act itself. And that was not just for the sake of it, but if it is in the act, you know to what extent you're going to be able to evoke it, invoke it, and also bring it into use when you think it's necessary. And the details of it is going to tell you what can you expect at a time when you need the fallback mechanism. So these were the ways in which every strand of looking at the taxpayers' difficulties, looking at a particular sector's problem, although the budget has not given you anything sector-specific, it was to give the macro picture. It was also to give the timeline. It was also to give a blueprint of how we want to take the economy forward. It was also to say whether we are fiscally being responsible or not. And it was also to say it's not because of fiscal incentives that industry is going to move forward. We are coming up with activities. We are putting money where assets will be created. When government puts money in infrastructure, of course it has cascading effect. And when particularly government sets itself a disinvestment target, which many immediately would say, oh my God, are you going to be able to achieve it? It's not just a question of achieving it, it's also a question of showing clearly that that achievement of getting that money, which many easily would say, selling family silver. But that money is not going off to something as fancy as a revenue expenditure item, but it's going into creating greater infrastructure for the country, which would probably have a lot more multiplier effect in terms of economic activity than to keep an inefficient public sector. Largely, there are some efficient ones also which are being put on the block. So everywhere the attempt has been to show that we've had a complete thinking through, to show that not only have we thought through it, but we are taking the most prudent route, fiscally prudent route. And end of the day, also telling you by when do we want to achieve certain progress, whether it is for housing, whether it's for infrastructure, and so on. So this budget, I'm sure many other earlier finance ministers can also speak about how intensely they've worked in preparing a budget. But here I can tell you, the intensity with which we've done has enabled us to see through the projects and its course, and in the consultation, therefore, we were able to get at whichever stage you would have difficulties or handicap, so that we are keeping that in the preparatory stage itself. So there still can be a lot of inadequacies which you in the ground can tell us, you should have done this way and not that. All right, we'll hear it. But the fact is, even after having heard a lot of people down from the ground, we've taken a course which typically, because of the experience that bureaucrats have in the ground, and also later they progress to come to Delhi as secretary to the government, their experience also gets infused into it. And that's not irrelevant at all. Even as much as I would say, sometimes bureaucracy has its Lutyens approach to many of the things which are so distant. It can be in Aurangabad or in Andaman or in Assam. Do you have a picture of it? Yes, many of them do have. I want to, at least the set with which I'm working are all people who have had their tenures in the ground. So it's not, what do you call, just a drawing board thesis that we're giving you. It is infused with a lot of ground level reality. And a last word about the fiscal deficit number, on which many people have been speculating that it'll cross 4, it'll touch 5. But I want to tell you that the experiences of the last time when India had a real tough economic situation, and the call taken at that time, and post that call, the number, the fiscal deficit number, which was touched by the government then, and then the splurging with which the economy was expected to reach a better level and rise from the, bottom that it had reached are all fresh in our mind. Yes, today we may have a situation where you'll want the government to spend, to show that you're a socialistic expression, pump priming the economy. It's all right. It's relevant jargon to use today, but it brings in a lot of memory of days when, globe was a lot more pink and red rather than white and whiter. So if that kind of a word has to be used today, and if I have to spend a lot of money, yes, we are willing to do that, but we are clearly saying that we shall not repeat the mistakes of the splurging that happened, whereas the money that is spent now is being spent with a clear picture of asset creation, public asset creation, such assets being that which can give greater connectivity to the place from where the produce has to come to the market. Connectivity so that those places which are without any reach will be improved. Connectivity to particularly districts which even don't have a minimum basic hospital facility. I have Sangeeta ji, I'm sure she knows the difference between a metropolitan which has good medical facility and some of the aspirational districts which don't have it. So the monies are being very clearly directed, and you'll know where that money goes for what. Like for instance, since again I'm talking about medicine, medical equipments import of those medical equipments which are probably not being made in India is now being brought in with a bit of a duty in it. But we very clearly said that duty which we are raising is not just going to go to the coffers for any other welfare expenditure, but that will be used for bringing medical infrastructure in those aspirational districts where there are no good hospitals at all. So we are showing very clearly where each of this money which is being raised will go. So it's not being raised to fill certain hole in the Consolidated Fund of India. The money being raised from the disinvestment will go towards infrastructure. We are showing the direction. We are telling you where the money which is going to be spent is going, so you can plan your investments and your expansion activity well in alignment with what the government does, because collectively all of us will benefit. You will facilitate the government and we'll equally facilitate the private. And anywhere also where we have indicated the government's expenditures are happening, or anywhere we have indicated where the government expenditure should happen or some other expenditure should come in, we've also said private participation, states participation, and a PPP model. Now, on the PPP model, there's no one solution. I'm sure each one can evolve. Each sector can evolve their own. So we've opened up all that. And above all, of course, Atanu Chakravarti is here. He must have spoken to you all. Have you already? No.
Yes, yes.
The biggest thing about which many of us don't speak, because India has always spoken about stock market, India has always spoken about budgetary deficits, India has always spoken about direct and indirect taxes, but the bond market, the various announcements about deepening the bond markets in India, the various announcements regarding how we can strengthen bond markets in India are, I suppose, exceptional to this budget. Exceptional. So, my opening remarks, I said I wouldn't do a long one, but it's always a temptation to speak, having been trained as a spokesperson, I suppose. So, thank you.